Hey, everybody, what's going on? This is your man, Big B, Brian Hanley. Welcome back to Steelers Almighty. Continuing our series of My Position by Position, a look at the Pittsburgh Steelers and what the 2025 roster could actually look like. Today, we are talking linebackers. You know, there was a lot of anticipation or excitement about bringing Patrick Queen on, what the linebacker room might look like. I'm not sure the Steelers got what they wanted. Now, Queen made a lot of tackles. He made some plays from here to there, and I just think it was a mixed bag. We brought in Peyton Wilson as well. He got drafted as a rookie. E-Rob signed back or was continued playing with us. Those two, him and Peyton Wilson, it was a battle as far as who was starting, who wasn't, depending on the formation. We're going to take a look at that. Also, any possible free agents, and if there's anybody out there that the Steelers may need to draft to bring in to compete for playing time this season. So let's get into this. Now, for the season, you know, I gave the Steelers linebacking group a C. Like I mentioned, Patrick Queen, he had a lot of tackles, but as far as missed tackles, he also had a lot of those too. Peyton Wilson had a learning curve. Figured out pretty early on in the season that you cannot run around blocks like you tried to run around them in college. You've got to be in your gap, stay in your gap. When you try to run around these blocks, these offensive guards, centers, they're quick. And when you try to go around, once they get up on you, you are out of position. He learned that early on because teams attacked him when they went into, a nickel formation and the Steelers ran the nickel a ton this year, 58% of the time, which is way too much in my opinion. Either way, they attacked him early, got better as the season went on, but he had to learn to stop trying to run around blocks. E-Rob was a thumper. Look, we know his limitations as far as pass coverage, but I think he did a better job even this year than last year. Last year, he was doing his best. He was banged up at the end of the year, but he did the best that he possibly could. This season, he had somebody else that was actually playing next to him that knew the position versus having to bring a safety down or guys off the street because the Steelers were so banged up at linebacker last year. He didn't have to play every down. He came off in obvious passing situations, but he was still a thumper on rundowns when he was in there. So I like the group overall, but again, a C because it wasn't great. It just wasn't great, especially against the run and late in the season. It was atrocious, to be quite honest with you. Let's first look at some of the Steelers that are out of contract. Look, we just talked about Landon Roberts. He is a free agent. I think this is a no-brainer that the Steelers got to try to sign and bring him back. I don't even think they got to try. They need to bring him back. Like I said, he knows the system, whether we like the system or not. He does know the system, and we know what we're going to get out of him. He's a veteran in the locker room, good presence. He's a tackler, a thumper, gives maximum effort. This is a guy that the Pittsburgh Steelers absolutely need to bring back. I'm not saying you got to break the bank, but you're not going to have to break the bank for him. This is a guy the Steelers need on their 2025 roster. Now, Tyler Medikevich, Dirty Red. Look, I'm sorry. He doesn't bring anything to the defense as far as any depth, anything like that. That's not his job. He is a special teams player. He was hurt a lot. Look, I love the nickname. I love the sentiment, but the Steelers got to move on from this. There's no reason to bring him back and have him be part of the Pittsburgh Steelers next season. Now, as far as guys that are under contract that the Steelers have to make decisions on. First one, Cole Holcomb. Look, Cole Holcomb, I'm sorry. I know it's a great story. For him to be back and to be able to practice at the end of the season is just incredible. But to have him be part of the Steelers moving forward, it does not make sense. Look, if they move on from Cole Holcomb, they're able to save $6 million. You have to save the money and move on from Cole Holcomb. Now, if you want to move on and then maybe try to sign him back to something cheaper, which I'm not sure that the rules allow that, but you may be able to do that. And if he's willing to do that, fine. But to save $6 million for a guy, and again, he's not just injury prone or he got hurt with the Steelers. He was hurt with the Commanders as well before he even came to the Steelers. This injury was way worse. Like I said, I love his grit and his toughness. It's a great story, but this is also a business. And since it is a business, the Steelers got to move on and save that $6 million to pay it somewhere else. Now, Patrick Queen. Look, here's the deal. Obviously, Patrick Queen. Well, I shouldn't say obviously. Yeah, we don't want to bring Patrick Queen back, but $17 million is his cap hit. And I was against it, right at the end of the season. I'm sure there was a lot of just frustration and emotion coming out saying we got to get rid of him. $17 million is too much. I still think it's too much. Steelers got to figure out a way to restructure that deal so they're not having a $17 million cap hit for a middle linebacker. That doesn't make any sense. So, yeah, maybe you extend it out a couple of years, but either way, you have got to restructure that because cutting him post June 1st, which the Steelers aren't going to do, that would save you $13 million. But you need a middle linebacker. So since you need one, and Queen wasn't horrible, let's not act like he was horrible, somebody the Steelers should just get rid of. They don't need to do that, but restructure the deal so it makes more sense. Again, he's only 25 years old. It's not like he's 30 years old. Extend him out and then get some of that money to pay some other players at other positions. But Patrick Queen, yes, absolutely, he needs to be a Pittsburgh Steeler. Peyton Wilson. Now, obviously, Peyton Wilson needs to be a Pittsburgh Steeler. He's 24. I mentioned earlier, yes, early on in the season, they just attacked him. Whether it was running, they saw who he was matched up in coverage or in zone coverage, which he was in. I think he's a better guy as far as man-to-man coverage than dropping in zone coverage, which there's a lot of you out there, myself included, think the Steelers need to just do away with most of their zone coverages. These drop zones just weren't working for the Steelers. Peyton Wilson was a victim of that early on, but he got better as the season went on. He figured out, what? I can't run around these blocks. I need to take these guys on and worked on how to take guys on. I think part of that, you get E-Rob and Patrick Queen in there saying, hey, man, this is how you got to do it. You're not 260 pounds, trying to take these guys on. There's a certain way that you can thin these guys off, hand placement, anticipation, reading keys, all that good stuff. Peyton Wilson needs to take a big step, but he took one to be better than what he was at the beginning of the year. In 2025, he needs to take an even bigger step. Look, I like E-Rob, but if Peyton Wilson can be on the field the majority of the time, the Pittsburgh Steelers defense is better. And why I say that is because if Wilson can be the tackler and the thumper as well as be in coverage, then the Steelers are better. But if he has to keep coming off the field and have E-Rob be out there on obvious rundowns, well, that's a problem. I'd like E-Rob, I do. But anytime play action comes, his limitations in the passing game are issues. We just need Peyton Wilson just to be better, just to get better from year one to year two. And if he does, I think we found ourselves a player. But obviously, he's going to be around in 2025. Now, here's the thing about Mark Robinson. He's $1 million cap hit to have him on the roster. I'm not sure that we need to be able to do that. Now, look, yes, he's a good special teams player and he's a depth piece, but for $1 million, now I don't know that you can cut him and get him back for maybe less than that. I don't think you can probably do that. But there's plenty of guys out there that you may be able to find for cheaper that can do what he does. Because, again, he's not bringing you anything on the defensive end. He does bring you a lot on special teams. But for $1 million, I don't know. I think the Steelers may need to move on. Now, moving on to free agents. Look, there are guys out there, man, that are free agents, some older guys that are out there, and I'm not sure that helps the Steelers. But they are some guys that have been productive. Levante David, Bobby Wagner, future Hall of Famer, Eric Kendricks. There's guys out there that absolutely could possibly help the Steelers, but those are older guys. That's not really in the cards for what the Steelers would want to do. No reason to bring those guys in, even if they wanted to be a Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm not a Steeler, excuse me. I don't think that helps us. Now, there are a few guys, as far as little younger guys, that we might be able to nab if that's a route that we want to go. Dre Greenlaw, he's out there. He's a former All-Pro. We've got Ernest Jones. We've got Cody Barton. I mean, there's guys out there that are available at the linebacker position if the Steelers want to go that route and bring somebody else in. And here's the thing. I mean, the Steelers showed last year that, yes, they would go out and spend money on a linebacker if they need be. But they don't need to do that now. They've got Queen. They can restructure that. He's still under contract. You got Peyton Wilson. They need to re-sign Elandon Roberts for sure. But then do you need to go out and get another name free agent? I don't think that's in the cards for the Steelers. Usually I have a wish list of guys at certain positions that I would want to bring in. Linebacker's just not one of those. I think the Steelers can backfill through the draft later on in the draft, maybe fifth, sixth. Well, we don't have a sixth, but seventh round pick. That way they might be able to backfill there. But to go out and sign somebody for $3, $4, $5 million to play linebacker for the Steelers, that's not something that we need. We got Queen. And don't get me wrong, we need depth, but we have Queen. We got Wilson. If we can get Roberts back, and then we can get someone else. But to go out there and spend that kind of money when we have so many other needs every other place and on defense, I think this is a position that gets backfilled through the draft versus going out there and signing somebody for $3 or $4 million in free agency. Now, as far as the draft, look, I mean, there are plenty of studs that are out there, Jahai. Campbell, Dante Lawson, Barrett Carter. I mean, those are the big name guys that probably aren't going to be around when the Steelers are looking to take a linebacker. A matter of fact, I would just pretty much guarantee that those guys aren't going to be around. However, Peyton Wilson was to a lot of people the top, off-ball linebacker that was available. And he was available when the Steelers picked in the third round, their second third-round pick. Now, obviously, they don't have 2 third-round picks as of now, but who knows? Maybe that's a position that they go for. I think if the Steelers do, I think it's got to be later than the third round. They've got so many other needs that they can't risk trying to get a depth linebacker this early in the draft. And that's what this would be, a depth linebacker. You're not doing that in the first 3 rounds, not with what the Steelers holes that they have to fill. That just wouldn't make any sense. Now, as far as draft picks, there's a few guys that maybe in the 5th round or later that might be around. You got Marlo Wax out of NC State, Corey Simon out of Ohio State. Corey Simon's kind of a reach. He may be gone in late 3rd, early 4th, but either one of those guys, if you wanted to pick up in the 5th round or later, they may be available for the Pittsburgh Steelers to take a look at. Again, I still think they got to backfill through the draft, but it's got to be later. It's got to be later. We can't afford to misstep here and take guys at the linebacker position when it's not a position of need as of right now. So if you were to ask me exactly what the Steelers need to do, I mean, if you could get Simon in the 5th, I don't know that you'll be able to. Yeah, I'd go there. Wax, the same thing. If you can get him in the 5th round, yes, absolutely. I would do that. But anything before that is a reach. Like the 4th round, I think we can pass on that. Like I said, too many other holes, too many other places, man. So I appreciate you all being here. Like I said, we're doing this my position by position. We're just getting started. Like I said, this is the defensive portion. We'll have an offensive portion as well. I appreciate everybody being in here. Thank you as always, and aloha.